Oh, my friend, I see that you have the milk from the maid.
Oh, she think this be the milk of the maid, but it be the blood of her father. Ah, cursed little dog. Get thee hence from my porch. Oh, thinking me a dog, he does not know that I actually be Antovio, whose wretched night of drinking did wrap me in a goat skin and leave me naked upon the lawn. Uh, Say, didst thou attend the ball last night and dance with my brother as I had suggested you might?
My friend Cecilia thinketh that I attended the ball and danced with her brother, but indeed I was the sire that she was dancing with all night in disguise. Oh, but I must lie to maintain my innocence. Oh, yes, Cecilia, your brother, he is quite a charming dancer, is he not?
Yes, 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 yes. Oh, that's good. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, 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 yes. Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Muprov Musings. This is episode number 21. I'm one of your hosts, Hal Munger, and joining me now on the line is your other host, Julian Bernardo. I'm sorry, everybody. I know you've had a lot of fun with just me and Hal recently on this podcast. I know the three of us, me, you, and Hal, have gotten to know each other quite well, but we will have to sully our Kristen little Shakespeare trio that we have. No, we're very excited this episode to bring on a guest. This is another person who we improvised with back in college, but I'll let her introduce herself. Welcome to the podcast, Jayda.
Hello, my name is Jayda. I'm a member of the Stanford Improvisers, and I love improvised Shakespeare, one of my absolute favorite formats. So I'm so excited to be here. Thank you guys for having me.
Of course. Yeah, we're particularly stoked to have Jayda on for a couple of reasons on this episode in particular, but also just in general. Jayda, what? Julian, you're making a face. No. I just want to know what this episode is, but it seems like you were going in a different direction. No, we can say what this episode is going to be about. We're going to be talking about the fun zone in Shakespeare. Now, you might be hearing this say the fun zone in Shakespeare. I've never heard of such a Shakespearean concept, and that's because it's sort of a peppering that we like to call the middle of a show. Mm-hmm. So, just to frame yourself, our episodes thus far have been pretty general Shakespeare stuff that will be important throughout the whole show. But right now we're zooming in a little bit to a specific part of the show. So if you listen to our Hero's Journey run, that one was a little bit more linear where we went through the different stages. Right now we're kind of zooming into the middle of the show. And so we're going to be talking about what that will look like. But we are particularly excited to have Jayda on to discuss this part. Why do you feel that way, Hal? Well, I mean, we got to have the most fun person on to talk about the fun zone. Yeah. And particularly in the Shakespearean fun zone, this fun requires you to have your wits about you and to be perceptive as to what's going on in order to participate in the fun. And Jayda is someone who can balance the fun with the sharp attention that's required to tussle in the Shakespearean fun zone. And we want to pick her brain about how that works. And let's frame people a little bit on some facts about Jayda. So one thing that I think is probably relevant here is you have experience doing like theater, like Shakespeare, like for real, right?
Yes. I was in A Midsummer Night's Dream as the first fairy. It was a Scottish first fairy I was.
Nice.
That's neither here nor there. But yeah, no, I have a lot of Shakespeare knowledge.
Do you love Shakespeare?
I would say adore Shakespeare, really. Have
you ever worked at a theater that had the word globe in its name?
Oh, yes. Oh, this past summer I was a stage management apprentice for the Merry Wives of Windsor. And oh boy, is there fun zone in that show. That show is like 99% fun zone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fill us in for I actually have not even the slightest clue about what happens in the Merry Wives of Windsor.
So we have Falstaff, who's this guy who's in one of the Henrys, maybe, but he's just like this dude, and he has like his little gang, his little posse with him. And he goes and he really wants to romance. Well, he wants to get money is his main thing, but he also wants to like have sex with these two women in town. Um, and so he is trying to like he sends them these letters, but he sends them both like the exact same letter. And these women are besties, and so obviously they show the letter to each other, and then they're like, "We are going to like get revenge on this guy because
Mm.
fuck this guy, right?" Am I allowed to
Yeah.
curse here?
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Yeah, they're like, "Fuck this guy," and so they start creating all these like elaborate pranks to get him to like come to the house, and then they keep baiting him, thinking so he thinks he's gonna like have sex with them, and then they like make him like go into a laundry basket or like throw him into the river or like make him dress up as a fortune teller so that the one of their husbands like beats the shit out of him and stuff. And there's which you know that's classic Shakespeare weird stuff, but yeah, it's so much fun zone. There's even more, but I'll cut it off there.
Wait, does it end in like a wedding with the like Shakespeare like we're tying things up, or is it one of the weird problem plays where it's like
It does. Yes, it ends with the wedding of one of their daughters. Because there's also this whole plot with one of the daughters who has these three possible suitors. And there's all sorts of plots and plans that happen there, where she really wants to be with Fenton, but he's like the bad boy. Also, the production I did was like 1950s themed. So all of it is like, I'm like, yeah, he's like a greaser, but I don't know if that's how it was originally written. But yeah, Anne Page. She could either marry Dr. Caius, the French doctor, or Sir Parson Hugh, the Welshman, the Welsh priest, or Fenton, just like some guy. And in the end, it ends with her marrying Fenton, and with like all the husbands and wives being like, "Oh, ha ha ha!" Like, because one of the husbands is like crazed with jealousy because he thinks that his wife is like sleeping with Falstaff because he, hears about it and stuff, and so that's his thing the whole time. And then she's like, "No, we were just pranking him, and we were just pranking you because you're so jealous all the time. Got you." And then he's like, "Oh my gosh, you guys, you got me." And so, yeah.
well,
And it's
that
Halloween.
actually gets into sort of how the narrative structure that we're going to be working with actually works, which is this idea of if you can keep all the problems to be in the realm of misunderstandings and kind of fake problems, then at the end of the play, it's really easy to tie everything together.
Mhm.
So the beginning of the play is this platform. We're setting up all these characters. They maybe have some plots and plans and stuff that get them into a chain of misunderstandings that get bigger and bigger and bigger in the middle. And that's where the fun comes in, is just people who don't understand what's going on bumping into each other and doing things that don't totally make sense and getting more and more confused.
Yeah, I invoke this concept a lot because it's what's helpful for me to understand, but I would consider these kind of sitcom style misunderstandings. In any sort of sitcom, by the end of the episode, you're back to the status quo. So all of the misunderstandings tend to be similarly, like very easy to fix. And so if you're trying to think about what level of like thing is happening in these shows, that's maybe a good source to draw from.
Yeah. But and we'll have another episode where we talk about setting it up, but it's fun to start in the middle, and to do that, we're going to give you some scenarios later in the episode that you can try playing out from the center of the show. But before we get there, we actually do want to talk more about just sort of asking Jayda how you started in improv to approach situations where your level of knowledge was different from your character's level of knowledge.
Yes, yes. Um, Early on in my improv education, I definitely heard this thing about like play to the top of your intelligence. And that was something that was sort of confusing when we got into this kind of dramatic irony kind of stuff of like, as like an improviser or a player, I know things to be true, but there are things that my character wouldn't necessarily know. Um, and so just really committing to like playing at the top of my personal intelligence. But my character can be at, any level of like knowledge or information. That was like a helpful clarification for me. Um, and and yeah, like, and also I think it allows you to just be really in the character when you kind of disregard that, and you can like kind of commit more to the character and think about like what would this character really be doing in this situation, not what like me improviser brain like do I think blah 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 blah. um and yeah, like kind of thinking about the different levels of information of player versus character lets you exploit some of that funny dramatic irony stuff.
Mm.
And yeah.
Dramatic irony. All right, we're all
Mm-hmm.
highfalutin people, but let's just straight up define it, because I don't think it's a phrase that maps onto its meaning super obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of
Yes.
you should define it, because I am not an English major.
Mhm. Dramatic irony is when the audience knows something that the character does not.
Yes. And
So, like in any story ever, usually that's happening to some degree.
yeah.
But how does that tie into comedy? Because the other theme of this episode that we're going to be talking about, why we kind of call it the fun zone, is that this is a lot of the comedy in Shakespeare plays is coming, a comedy in the modern sense of like the funny part of the Shakespeare play is coming from this misunderstanding, this dramatic irony. So like what's going on there? And why is that funny?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think for the audience, it's just so funny to be like ahead of the character and to know like
Mhm.
exactly the problem that the character is into and like how to solve it. That can be fun for the audience to be like, oh, haha, joke's on you. We know what's going on. But then also, it's just like it's just funny, or it's a funny situation to be in a misunderstanding, like the ones
Yeah.
in Shakespeare and comedies.
Right. And I would qualify that just as you did at the end, that dramatic irony can also be totally not funny, right? Like,
Mhm.
famously Romeo and Juliet, like they both kind of
Yeah.
murk themselves because they don't know what's going on, but that's not like played for laughs, right?
Hmm.
So I think it also probably derives in a big way from the kinds of situations that we're putting these characters in. Would you guys
Mhm.
agree?
Definitely.
Yeah, often ththese characters think that really bad things are happening, but actually they're okay. So that's kind of like watching a fail where the person falling on their face like ends up okay in the end or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like in Midsummer, how the lovers are like all getting taking this flower potion and stuff, and then they're all like in love with each other, and so you see this big quarrel that they have as the audience, and you're like, no, guys, like you don't actually like no one is actually like feeling this way. It's just the potion and stuff. But it's funny
Yeah.
because they're just so mad at each other because they don't
Yeah.
know better.
Totally. And this is where you really do have to integrate like the emotion stuff that we were talking about. Is it's not fun if we play these small scenarios and people have more kind of realistic reactions to them, or like we said in the emotion episode, have a reaction that's at the level that you as a person would have. It's very much magnified when we have these Shakespearean level extreme emotions that we feel about these situations.
Uh, And before we get into these situations, let's also do a little hint at what you're going to see in the next episode about how these situations might arise. Like Jayda just mentioned potions.
Yeah.
Probably maybe 1 in 10, 1 in 6 shows you want to actually have potions that are causing people to love. But if you run into someone who's taken a love potion and no longer loves you, that's a classic misunderstanding. But what are some ones that are more applicable to a wider swath of Shakespeare's plays?
Well, let's all just fire off as much as we know. We have some written down, and I'll just say twins. So there's often twins in shows, and when you're twins, you look the same, so you can get mistaken as each other.
Mm-hmm. And
Mhm.
yeah, oftentimes those twins like were separated at birth, so they don't know that there's a second
Yeah.
identical
Mhm.
copy of them walking around, and people are bumping in. I think I'm talking to that person, but I'm actually talking to that person.
Mhm. And clothes. Uh, just wearing any sort of clothes that are not your clothes can be wildly misleading. And I mean, not to get too crazy, but twins and clothes together can make some real antics. I'm thinking of Twelfth Night.
I gotta ask you with the clothes. So what do you mean when you put on clothes and it just suddenly can be really confusing?
Yeah, what do you mean by that?
When you're wearing clothes that aren't your clothes, obviously everyone's going to think that you're just whoever would be wearing those clothes. I think in Shakespeare comedies, we kind of accept a large level of like, it doesn't matter like what this person looks like. As soon as you're wearing a different outfit, you are completely disguised and you have adopted the identity of whoever is wearing that outfit. And everyone around you will accept this as fact.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the Team Rocket thing if you watch Pokemon, where Jessie's long pink hair is like always in any disguise that she has, and Meowth is always walking around, so the audience can fully understand what is going on. That is this Team Rocket in disguise, but Ash does not recognize.
I'll throw out there letters as well. If you write a letter to someone and you give it to somebody else to give to that person, it might often end up with somebody else. And there'll be a misunderstanding there.
Yeah. And with that, just generally, even the words that leave your mouth can be overheard and misunderstood, or rumors can pass. Or if you verbally tell your servant to deliver a message and then they forget, they might deliver the wrong message. The wrong person.
So you can think about these kind of things that we're saying now as like Shakespearean tropes. So, as with any genre format, when you're throwing around tropes, these are just things that kind of happen in Shakespeare that the best way is to just learn them, talk about them, throw them around.
Mm-hmm. But it sounds like it gets really confusing. Like,
yes.
And maybe the answer is that it just does get really confusing as, every character starts to, both have to keep track of what is really true and what's going on and what does every single character think is going on. Like, how do you keep all that in your head, Jayda?
I think like just listening really, really hard and just having big listening brain on is really helpful. There's definitely been a lot of like you're in the wings and you're not in the scene. And it's like, okay, guys, like, just so I'm exactly clear, like, this is what's happening, right? And then sometimes they'll be like, no, I don't know if that's what was happening, but at least you're just communicating what your impression of reality is. And then you get on stage and then you figure it out there. But I think yeah, just being really, really tuned in and really present is kind of the number one tip I would have, or the number one thing that I do to try to keep it all straight. And yeah, just really like and when you're on stage, communicating non-verbally with your partner by like looking at them and making the face at them and just trying to non-verbally communicate your thoughts to them, which I think is a highly effective way to communicate hits. Player to player and not like character to character.
Mm-hmm. And Hal, if people listened maybe to our warm-up today, there's also another tool, right, that you can use on stage if you're not trying to tell your character something, but you are trying to tell the improviser something, right?
Yeah, I mean, the flip side of nonverbal is to verbally communicate. And there are kind of two ways to verbally communicate something to your player without the partner. One of them is to secretly embed it into your dialogue. I really hope you don't hit me right in my weak spot. And that like communicates to the other person you have a weak spot. And then the other one is the thing that we were doing in the opening exercise, which is to turn out to the audience and say, this is my internal thought, and then turn back into the scene. And that one is more only applicable in Shakespeare, but it's very applicable in Shakespeare. Yeah. Jayda, like, is there too much? Can you do that too much? Or should you just be like, basically anytime there's any deception going on, telling the audience what's really happening and your partner?
Can you do what too much?
Turn out to the audience and say what's actually going on.
Nah, I think you get infinite asides. I think maybe you should have like, as with anything, be judicious. But I wouldn't say that there's such a thing as like, I've yet to be like, wow, this improvised Shakespeare show, too many asides. I've never once had that thought cross my mind. So.
And how much are those asides, do you think, for the audience, and how much do you think are they for the other player?
Oh, I would say they're 99% for the other player and 1% for the audience. I feel like the
Yeah.
audience, they're just watching, so they're just being able to think so hard about everything that's happening. I don't know if they are, but conceptually that's the case. Whereas the other player, it's like I need to communicate this idea to you, and this is just the best and most clear way that I can communicate this to you.
Yeah. Okay. Let me throw a scenario at both of you here, which is, these are all the tools for communicating things to your partner, and that's all well and good. But there can always be a kind of grand misunderstanding that happens in improv, in any kind of improv, right? But particularly when we're dealing with levels of information and dramatic irony, yeah, your partner can just totally not get it. They can be thinking about their physicality, about their language or something and miss it. What to do there, right? I think we've all been in this situation, and it
Right.
sucks.
I mean, I get in this situation a lot, partly because I like to play. There's a saying like play to the top of your intelligence. Sometimes I like to play to the top of my partner's intelligence, and I misevaluate that. Where I'm like, okay, I'm going to play in an extremely subtle way so that the audience is genuinely confused. My partner will get it, and then it goes horribly wrong, and I didn't convey enough information. So in general, yeah, Shakespeare is nice actually because you can be even more clear than I'm normally not that clear.
Mm-hmm.
Once you're in the situation, that sucks. There are some times where it's salvageable, where you can say like, especially in Shakespeare, you can turn out to the audience and be like, "Oh, like." If you can justify them literally being confused, of like, "Oh, I think the Duke is confused right now and thinks that I'm this person dressed as this person, but actually I'm this person dressed as this person," and then make it part of the scene. And like, no mistake is a mistake until you treat it as a mistake, so you can value it and find joy in the scene from it. But sometimes you get really, really like there's no way out, and you almost sometimes the best thing to do is break the whole reality of everything and just fix it.
Whoa, what do you mean by that? Let's dig a little deeper. Break the whole reality of everything.
There was like one show, I think, where you made a bullet sound effect from off stage during one of our film noirs, and it killed one of the main people in the show, and that was not what you'd intended to do.
Right.
And we had a show the night before, the weekend before, where that had happened, and it had just took out the main character and like ruined the show. So you just entered and were like, "Oh, this person fainted," and like there was a loud noise, or like just something that hard blocked the reality.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Hard block as the concept
of just like do what you got to do to get the show back on the rails, because this isn't short form. The overall short show matters more than the individual moment.
Yeah.
Salvage the.
Totally.
Jayda,
Jayda, if I was on stage flailing and you're not on stage, right? You have some moves that you can do to come in and help me out here, right? If you're like in the wings observing this, and I feel like people in the wings probably observe it more often than those on stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, there's all the typical things in our arsenal. You can do always some classic scene painting. Is a great way to just go in and do like a little drive by and clarify what's going on. But yeah, I think in the case of a grand misunderstanding, that's one of those like celebrate failure moments, I think, where like you start to laugh and your partner starts to laugh and the audience is like, this is not like what is supposed to be happening in universe right now. But we all know we're watching an improv show right now, and I hope that everyone understands that such things are a liability to happen. But yeah, sometimes it is okay to just, in my opinion, to kind of like step a little bit out of the reality to clarify, or to like once you start laughing about it, it's kind of like, okay, this is a wash anyways, so we might as well just get the truth out there, or we might as well just convey in the least delicate terms like what I'm trying to convey right now, and then just kind of getting back to it.
Yeah, I think of Robin Fierberg during these times. He was someone I used to improvise with when I was a lot younger. and he would kind of list on his fingers whenever he got confused during the show. He'd be like, wait, just so that we're all clear, I'm the mayor and you're coming to my office. You are the person who had done this thing. He would just list off, totally not something that his character would actually say. And Brian Contreras also did a lot of that in Shakespearean time. I remember him playing a character that would basically just list all the established facts of the scene. And it's similar to if you're in class and you're confused and you're like, should I raise my hand right now? It's like someone else is probably confused. So
yeah,
doing that for people is helpful.
We love Robin and Brian, and those are super helpful. I honestly love to go in and do that. I think I've done that multiple times. Call the scene where we just kind of figure stuff out, because sometimes you really just need that.
Mm-hmm. And adopting a sort of like doing like sort of like expositional monologue can also be a helpful way to clarify things. Like in addition to or instead of calling a scene where you do that, you can just kind of just boldly state what you believe to be happening, and then all of a sudden that's what's happening.
Yeah, and trying to make your partner have fun is huge, and it makes me think about a connection I want to make here. To strengthen your improv synapses and neurons, which is that this fun zone time, it's not exactly, but bears some similarities to like some short form that you might have experience with. It's somewhat similar to the like test trials and enemies part of Hero's Journey that we talked about, but it really is a time where I think you can focus on the more mainstream improv like things of just like for example trying to kind of rib your partner a little bit on stage or having fun with them in that way. How do you feel about playing in that zone, Jayda, and like how short form concepts can work in this long form format?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of pimping each other out in Shakespeare. I'm thinking of a moment with John Mistley where someone gave him like a letter or a sonnet. Someone was like, "Oh, this sonnet you wrote. Might you read it out?" He was like, "Oh, awesome, thanks. I would love to." That is the fun zone of it's the seat is hot, the stage is hot. It's a battlefield, but in the best way possible.
Yeah. How much do you think about it like that, Hal? Like the short form, long form overlap at times like this? Or are you just so allergic to short form that you don't even try to think about it?
With Hero's Journey, I made that comparison. I was very on board with that comparison for the middle of it. With this, to me, it's more fun than the fun zone of short form where you're just being fun and chaotic because you have the platform and the setup, where there's a lot of background information coming into every scene that, and you're getting to have a lot of fun with that. So, and you're also still accountable to the future. So it's a little different, but it is similar to that in that the consequences of your action, as long as you keep track of those things, don't have narrative consequences. And you're not thinking like, oh, in this scene, I'm trying to spur about some future scene. It's just, oh, that person thinks I'm their mother. I'm actually their lover. And we're talking to each other. This is funny. And kind of getting some joy in that.
Yeah.
Yes. And also like the game of it all. Like the game in these misunderstanding scenes is the like misunderstanding. And you can just like, it's so fun to just heighten that and heighten that and heighten that within the scene. That's very short form pilled, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe we can go through some examples of some of these scenarios and pitch to Jayda of like, how would you kind of heighten these situations? What are some things you could say that, in character could elevate the stakes? Because we have a lot of scenarios written up that you could use in your practice if you want to try doing these kind of situations.
I like I have one that I'll ask, which is Jayda, let's say you're in a situation where the You are either like, Duke or Duchess, and you are dressed up as an old person, and
Right.
you are maybe fielding questions to someone about yourself, but in disguise.
Oh, yes, it might be. Well, you would start with like uh, and what do you think of that Duchess in the castle? And then they would give something bad,
Yeah.
presumably. Um, and then, I guess I would just kind of go into what they were talking about. But should we do it?
Yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. So what do you think of that old Duchess?
Oh, that old Duchess is quite a crab. She never gives but a single coin to us workers here in the farm.
Uh, uh, but but hasn't she made generous donations to the farm in the past?
She hath made generous donations to our farm simply to take our land and take our cows for her personal little farm in her own castle.
But don't you think that that her personal farm is beautiful and well curated? And
In-
oh, I what I mean to say is, why do you think she has wrought this injustice upon the farmers? Don't you think you deserve it?
Ah, deserve it. We do work 16 hours every day out in here to provide wheat for the barley mill out in the nice place in the kingdom. 'Tis not something that we deserve to get our coins taken away from us, our farmland, and our cows. 'Tis a cruel mistress that doth reside in the castle, no? Don't you think that if that Duchess did exist right here on this farmland, that she could not even walk 5 feet without getting caught in a prairie hole?
I I believe she could sprint 100 meters without falling into any such prairie hole. I bet I could as well. Not that that bears on the answer to my question.
Is so ugly her son as well, that she doth parade around the city as if he be the most beautiful little baby that hath ever been born. Looks worse than the piglets that I doth raise here.
Oh, oh, I cannot stand for such cruelty. And then I think that's the point when I would take my head off because you can't talk about my son that way. That's ridiculous.
He looks like a piglet.
Yeah.
He's a
That-
beautiful baby boy, and you don't
and-
know what you're talking about.
and that's the fun escalation of being able to poke at the thing that makes the person more and more mad. There's an awesome bit of dramatic irony there of like if she was here, she would fall down, and like especially if you had a scene to back it up. Like in this case, it was a little weird because it was like this seemed like a kind of genuinely dislikable Duchess in the farmland. Usually, like it's a more likable ruler being insulted by a dislikable person who's going to get their comeuppance. But in the situation where it was like, Julian was in love with the character who's talking, but was bashing on the Duchess or whatever, doing all these things of like, oh, you're so different from.
Yeah. Do you guys want to try one?
Well, a different one or this one?
Oh, a different one.
All right, you want to give us one, Julian?
Yeah. So can one of you do a little wink? Just one of you. All right. So Jayda, you are hiding, and you are hiding by a person who's talking about how shitty their goat is, but you think it's about
My
you.
favorite one.
Okay, wait. So Julian, then can you be in the
Oh,
scene?
sure.
With me?
Yeah. I'll be with you.
For context, there are going to be a couple lines delivered when we're out of earshot of Jayda, and let's get a suggestion for something besides our goat, just so that's something we've never done before.
Yeah.
Your wagon.
Okay, so there are going to be a couple lines to make it clear we're talking about wagon. Jayda won't hear those, and it's like,
and then yeah, and you'll and Jayda will make it clear when she enters the scene.
Yeah. Oh, my wagon did break again today. It breaks down every day. It's the most rickety old wagon I've ever driven, and I'm gonna have to take it in to the Cooper to get its wheels mended.
This silly Cooper, that thou still doth contain this wagon in thine prairie. 'Tis the oldest wagon that I have ever seen.
Yes, but let's walk further along the path.
Oh, upon me come mine lover to be and his brother. I wonder what they speak. Could it be me?
Yay, yes, I worry the old thing has no life left in her. For no matter what I do and what I offer, it still looks more aged than anything I did ever have in my house.
Aye, more aged than the great mountains that doth line our kingdom, no?
'Tis true. I fear someday, soon maybe, I shall have to bury it.
They speak of me as though I am some old ugly wench, when I believed myself to be a young spring hen. Oh, what more foul words may they say?
And truly pains me to speak so unkindly of her, as she's served me well all these years. But you know, once you've ridden something down to the last ride, it can't service you anymore the way it used to.
Aye, 'tis been ridden way too much, mine brother Cooper.
Nay,
How
methinks
slanderous!
methinks the horses that did be used with it be more useful than she is.
Aye. Thinkest thou that thou might sell it for but 1 or 2 pence?
Sell her? Oh, I would sell her if I thought I could find a buyer, but yay, methinks something as rickety and old as her is destined to break down on whoever next takes her into employ.
An idea doth come to mine head then. Perhaps we shall dress her up a bit, and then find some other gullible little scoundrel in the city to pawn her off to.
Yay, that may work.
Oh, how horrific! Oh, I must escape without them noticing me, for they may not know that I heard their foul planning. But, yea, I know the next time I should see mine Cooper, that I will treat him coldly, and not let on that I heard this conversation whatsoever.
Yay, well, I would dress her up and try to sell her, but I did spend my last pence buying this nice gown for my beloved wife. I think I shall surprise her with it later or my beloved fiance. I think I shall surprise her with it later and propose marriage.
She beeth the most beautiful in the land, brother. You are lucky.
Nancy. You get the idea.
Yeah.
It's troll.
It's troll. It's troll, and it's so fun, and it's game.
It's so funny. It's really so funny.
Because this is where the narrative kind of naturally evolves, because we cut to some other scene with other misunderstandings, but eventually we're gonna, like, there's obviously another scene coming up where I give Jayda the dress and ask marriage, and Jada's mortified and runs off, or like tries to trick me in some other way, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Maybe someone else puts on the dress and I fall in love with it. You know, it's just like you get the idea. So what are let's just read out the other ones that we have listed. I think they fall into 2 genres. One of them is the sort of hiding, mishearing, and one of them is the thing like the first one where someone is concealed and there's a mistaken identity. So the mistaken identity ones that we have written down are, besides Duke dressing up as the old man, one of them is you disguise as the person your lover is interested in. So you have a lover and you're worried, you're jealous. So you're like, oh, I'll dress up as someone they might be interested in and try to see if they're loyal. That often goes awry.
You might also walk into the throne room, and there's like a drunkard on the throne who is sitting there, but you believe it to be the king himself.
Mm-hmm. More twin stuff. You bump into your lover's identical twin, and they are mean to you or don't know who you are, or otherwise just, not acting like your lover would act. And then you see your lover again, and then you're mad at them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so good.
for all of these, like, we're not saying do exactly this in your show, but these are scenarios you can practice to get at the types of things that you're going to be doing in the middle of your show. And a lot of these are taken from Shakespeare plays. And then there's also just lying. Like if you're an evil advisor, you can just be lying to the king and saying, "Oh, here's this thing," and turn out to the audience and saying. But in all of these scenes, hopefully you're practicing turning out to the audience and saying different from what's happening.
Yeah. And is there too much of this? Like, can you do too much of this in the show? Like in the fun zone, do you either of you foresee most scenes involving a misunderstanding like this, or do we still have kind of like not filler scenes, but the like kind of connective tissue scenes that are more straightforward about getting out plot?
I think those connective scenes can be really nice and can be a nice reprieve. I love a good, like, emotionally grounded, just
Mm-hmm.
nice scene. One of my favorite scenes in our Shakespeare run when we did it, however long ago that we did it, was a scene with me and Will where he was like a prince and I worked for him or something, but we had a really nice scene like in his room where he was like telling me his feelings about the situation, and it was a nice way for him to like recap some of the things that had happened slash potentially clarify for the other players in the wings and for the audience, but also to flesh out his like the emotional stakes of the story, and to do that work. And it was just like it was just a lovely scene. And then it's just a nice, change in energy. Because when it's all just like funny misunderstanding, funny misunderstanding, funny misunderstanding, then each individual one is a little less funny because there's so many. And so I think it's necessary to have those arcs.
Yeah, in real Shakespeare, like Midsummer or Merry Wives, what would you describe as like the tempo and rhythm of the middle part? Because there totally is the fun zone in that show, either of those shows. And yeah, is it relentless misunderstanding, or do you think that there are more of those connective tissues in the actual shows?
I think part of the thing that helps the pacing in other shows or in a lot of Shakespeare shows is that there's a lot of different characters
Mm-hmm.
and they're all doing their little thing. There's just
Mm-hmm.
like an insane amount of characters. There's like 20 characters in every show. And
Yeah.
so, you're always getting to like take the break and go to the mechanicals practicing for the play. And then you're back to Fairyland and then you're back to the lovers. And then, you get to move through all of those. And then that allows there to be those of nice like gaps in pacing. I think it's a little different when you're doing like a, 5, 6, 7 improvised Shakespeare when there's fewer characters. I think this is
Yeah.
one way where our improv must adapt beyond
Yeah.
the originals.
Totally.
But hopefully what you're doing kind of in this zone is getting on the people who haven't been playing and switching back and forth. And one of the fun things about the fun zone is that because you don't have some agenda here, you're not like trying to get to some specific endpoint. A lot of times you can just pick any two characters and put them in a scene. And hopefully there is some underlying misunderstanding. So it's like, okay, what happens if we put twin number 2 in a scene with Julia or whatever? And Julia maybe thinks twin number 2 is twin number 1, but maybe there's not some clear thing that's going to come out of that. And you just see them misunderstand. And then you're like, okay, now let's put twin number 1 in a scene with the king. And it's like, okay, there's just trying out the different combinations. And usually because the misunderstandings multiply, if you put twin number 1 in a scene with Julia or 2 in a scene with Julia, she now thinks all this wrong stuff because she thinks they're twin number 2. If you put Julia in a scene with anyone else, that misunderstanding will infect those other people. And once everyone's been infected, then you can put anyone with anyone because everyone has misunderstandings. And if you want, you can, I think Jayda is actually very good at being kind of giga-brained about it and finding the most crazy pair of like these two people will really push each other's buttons. But the main thing is there are just a couple pairs that you can't do. Like you can't put twin number 1 with twin number 2 because then they'll realize they're twins and
Right.
the whole thing, the charade will end before it. So as long as like a big part of it is actually keeping the right information from coming out. So if Julian and I are discussing Jada's character behind her back, the last thing we want to do is mention that we're talking about our wagon. If we do that, the game is up unless Jayda is like, what mean they by wagon? Are they talking about how I often wag my hand?
Yeah, exactly. That's a point that I think we should hit hard, which is while you're in this stage of the show, don't resolve it, don't resolve it, don't resolve it. One of the biggest instincts, I think, with people who are new to narrative long form is let's resolve it, let's resolve it, let's resolve it. Like, we've done the scene. All right, let's like resolve it. But no, like the appeal is this slow marination after we set these things and then we resolve them all at the end. And they're such simple things that we really can resolve them all at the end.
But maybe like a similar question to the one that you were initially asking us, I want to pitch to Jayda is how many like with these problems that we need to resolve, how many problems should there be, or how many, maybe another way of saying this is how many people should actually be scheming in a show?
Ooh, I think like and this is me just spitballing here. My intuitive answer is that like a 1-to-1 scheming to being schemed upon ratio be ideal. If everyone's scheming, that's like a lot of schemes to keep track of. And when you're scheming, you're less invested you're less invested in how you're being schemed upon by other people. And so yeah, I think that some people should just be being schemed upon for sure. But sometimes there's counter schemes. I acknowledge those as a premise.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I think that the more schemes you like, the fact of the matter, the more schemes you have, the harder it is to come up with like a good justification at the end for like resolving everything in a short amount of time. It just makes it like the last scene a little bit clunkier to wrap everything up.
Mm-hmm.
But that's fine. Who cares? Whereas when you have like a little bit less scheming, it can be nicer and tighter to wrap everything up. So that's just the trade-off. But schemes are fun.
So you're somewhere between 1 and 3, maybe, if there's a 7-person cast?
One person? No, there should be more than one person scheming. There should definitely be at least 2 people scheming. One scheme is nothing. There needs to be at least 2 schemes minimum. But probably for a 7-person cast, I think 3 schemes plus or minus 1 counter scheme.
This is the formula. You heard it here, folks.
Julian, is that something you agree with?
I think that there's space. Okay. Here's my issue with what's been said so far, which I don't really know blank about blank, to be honest. But I think that like you don't need to either be a schemer or a not schemer, right? Like people can be schemed upon and also scheme. So like what's more important in my mind is like the number of schemes total, I guess. If we're really like getting into the nitty-gritty of it, like you shouldn't be schemed upon in more than one way, maybe, and you shouldn't be scheming in more than one way. But as long as that sort of balance is kept, then I guess it's fine because aren't there some shows where there's like kind of like a master schemer? Like I don't really know, but like Iago or whatever, right? Is like a master schemer. And so he's probably throwing out like, I don't know, 3+ schemes. And so there's not space for too many more schemes, I would think.
Okay. Well, if you're kind of each individual scheme then my number gets a lot higher. I was thinking more along the lines of like how many people should be scheming.
Sure. Yeah. So I think we're saying the same thing, which is that it could just be one person scheming in some contexts, but they got to be scheming hard.
Yeah. But like a comedy of errors is a play where I'm not sure. I'd have to rewatch / read it, but I think it might be operating on basically no schemes. It's 2 twins and 2 servants two identical set of twins were born, and they were assigned to be twin servants, and those 2 pairs were separated, and they both wind up in the same location, and there's just misunderstanding galore because the servant keeps on going to the wrong twin and doing the wrong, and like maybe there's one person scheming in the whole thing, but like pretty much everyone is just trying to live their normal life and they're still getting the shit beat out of them for no reason.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's also affected by the number of misunderstandings. But like maybe
That's
my
true.
ideal ratio would be like one person who's genuinely scheming of like, oh, I'm going to dress up as this other person and escape. And then one person who's like, you know, either identical or looks really like someone else or happens to put on someone else's clothes by, or like maybe like one scheme and one, because a single scheme can cause all 6 people to be misunderstanding, including the schemer. Like you can get schemed upon by accident by your own scheme. And that happens all in one of the first Shakespeare runs I did. I was a poisoner and it was a tragedy, but I put some poison in this thing that got passed around through maybe 4 different characters and ended up being handed back to me and I drank it. And so I was the first person to die in the tragedy. And I was like, my grand total of addition to this plot has only been to kill my own character and nothing else has been helped by that.
That's so true. Yeah, I think a division here that you just made clear for me that I want to express for the audience is not to conflate misunderstandings with schemes, right? You can have a totally a misunderstanding where nobody was scheming at all. It was just a matter of circumstance that led to this misunderstanding.
But I think there is go Jayda.
And schemes can lead to misunderstandings. Like in Midsummer, when Puck is trying to give the love potion to Titania on behalf of Oberon, and he does it to her, but then he also is supposed to give it to one of the lovers, and then he gives it to the wrong lover, and so then he's just like giving it to more lovers and stuff like that, and so that's like the scheme becomes misunderstanding. Schemes beget misunderstandings.
The scheme should probably not work unless it's the counter scheme that's like catching the bad person, you know?
Yeah.
But just in general,
that's a really good point.
Caution low schemes. I think that my thing is kind of the opposite of if everyone in the show decides to start being like, I'm going to be the person to put on that person's clothing, it gets really, really, really confusing. And like a single scheme already might get really, really, really confusing. So like keep it low. And one of the ways that you can run your show off the rails is to have 40 different mistaken identities going on top of each other.
Yeah, I would like to rescind my previous numbers. I think that you're totally right there, because I did forget that schemes give way to misunderstanding. So yeah, more misunderstanding.
Yeah, less scheme, more misunderstanding. Jayda, I think it would be interesting to hear some of your favorite moments from improvised Shakespeare that you've done, and maybe just reasons that you think it's a fun format and reasons you think the listener should keep listening and try to learn how to do this.
Yeah. There's that scene with Will that I mentioned that I really liked. Hal, I think you were the one to deliver, correct me if I'm wrong, the final couplet in The Duck and the Dancer. Was that you?
Julian.
I think it was me.
No, it was Julian. Oh, awkward. But that was really good. I love the language as part of it. The language is something that really stresses people out, which I understand. And I'm sorry that is a stressful thing. But I do think it's just really fun. And yeah, like rhyming and couplets is a really fun part of it. But I'm trying to think of other scenes that I've really liked. I just can think of like little moments, like the gripe being endowed as this illness that was running rampant in the kingdom. In I think The Duck and the Dancer as well. If anyone else has any, share them and get back to me. I'm thinking.
One of my favorite shows that we did was The Monkey King's Son, which I think we've mentioned already. But one way in which, dramatic irony and like disguises came in a big way is there was, like a population of monkeys that wanted to, traverse into the more human land. And all of these monkeys were pretending to be people. And I just remember playing a monkey and pretending to be a human. And that was just such a fun thing to do, where I'm wearing like a costume, I guess, to appear to be a human, but maybe my tail would poke out at certain times and I have to justify that to my partner. And that's a case where the disguises and dramatic irony was so fun to play.
Yeah, well, what I remember from that show, and this is, I mean, Will is a very, very intelligent player, so this is not something on him. But this is about the like you can do things in the straightforward way or the complex way. I think I was a guard in that show, and three monkeys passed through to trick me through various disguises into thinking they were human and walk by. And eventually we came to the show where Will, who had been playing the Monkey King, needed to get past the guard. This is a comedy show. No one has died. And Will beats his chest, jumps up and grabs onto the ceiling of the space that we were improvising in and swings like maybe 6 feet across the stage physically and stabs me in the throat and just kills my character and Anna's character with the other guard. And it was a comedy, so we just never mentioned again that the guard had just been like murdered. But you can always do things in the straightforward. You know, there's trickery, and then there's also just being awesome and committing.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah, I think that's a beautiful moment of playing in the character. Like Will's character was really pissed off in that show, and he was playing to it. And sometimes being like a tragedy character in a comedy setting can amplify it. Well, this is the point. I think we're wrapping up now. Jayda, you
Yes.
can basically say whatever you want to say at this point. So you can give an improv wisdom that you think our listeners should know. You can just talk about a TV show that you stan, you want more people to watch. You can pretty much say anything. You can shout out just things that you're doing outside of improv that you want people to tune into. But let us know what's up.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm legally obligated to say that my play that I wrote and am directing, Yakuman Chance, will be going up in the Nightery Theater at Stanford University, February 29th to March 2nd. That's right. Leap year show. Exciting stuff. It's about 4 young women playing mahjong in their hometown of Chula Vista, California, and having the conversations that all young people have about, you know, what it means to be like growing up and entering the workforce and identity and stuff like that. And it's hilarious. And it's all about mahjong. So it's great. I mean, what more can you ask for? That's my mandatory plug. But improv stuff, I think that more and more when I think about theater in general, and I think by extension improv, it really is about just kind of like getting in the room and being with people and being present and like giving each other your time and energy and just like connecting and making something fun together. And that everything else, like, you know, a great byproduct of that process, but that it really is all about the just like getting together and having fun. And if you're not having fun, literally, what is the point? What is the point? Like, art is great, and it, you know, but I don't know. I don't think it should be like this great hardship to make all the time. At least not when it comes to like college theater and college improv. I think it should be about just, you know, just you and your pals having a laugh and, you know, making each other feel uplifted and supported and happy. And yeah, that's my improv soapbox. And I think that extends beyond college improv too. I think that should be true of all theatrical experiences, is that it should be fun and lovely. Fun and lovely only 2024 is my motto.
That's why we had you on the Fun Zone episode. Translating that to Shakespeare, playing in the way that you actually find. Like, if you don't find the plots and plans and confusion fun, you can do all of that stuff without that. You can play characters who are just very straightforward and understand what's going on and still have all that joy if they're, you know, monkeys, or if they're, you know, whatever, you know, fairies or whatever other. The fun can come from a lot of different places, not just from confusion and complication.
Well, if you're in the Bay Area, go check out Yakuman Chance on February 29th through March 3rd. And if you're an improviser, have fun. One little piece of trivia as we close out is that Jayda is the final character improviser from a new play, which is so
Ooh.
expertly intertwined with Muprov Musings. But the final one to finally visit us on the podcast. So we are extremely grateful that you came to talk to us today and share your ideology and wisdom and knowledge with respect to Shakespeare.
Yeah, last but not the least, Jayda is joining us last because she is such an expert on Shakespeare and can tell us things about the Merry Wives of Windsor. And we knew that Shakespeare was coming up this winter. So very, 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 very fun to have you on. Jayda,
I can't wait for 2 years into Muprov Musing when you guys have, like
Miguel.
Yeah, someone on. You have Brandon Rep on, and you're like, and this is like the final person who was involved in a new play to be on the podcast. Like, we're so grateful to have you here, and you'll be talking about some like insane format that I haven't even thought of yet.
Well, there are some people there are some other people that we're saving, especially some musical people.
Oh yeah,
who would already have come on as guests were they not so good at music-y stuff. But yeah, Jayda, if someone wanted to play Mahjong against you and they were a listener, how would they do that?
My Mahjong soul code is 115137902. Username Jayda.
All right, you heard it here, folks. First.
You heard it here, folks. First. That is her friend code. And Hal, what was this?
This has been Muprov
Musings.
So my sign off is that I've been using this website lately called Incarnate, INKARNATE.com. And it's a map making website. And it seems like people use it a lot for like D&D maps. Like dungeon masters will use it to make their maps. I've been using it to make this like sort of Shakespearean / Elizabethan era-ish, vaguely, like city. And this was like a side thing that I was working on for this bigger project that now has like completely taken over my life. I've been spending like just literally all day, every day. This is all I'm doing. This, and I'll play Mahjong for like 2 hours. But it's like 10 hours of Incarnate map making and 2 hours of Mahjong every day. And that's been it. And it's been fucking awesome. It's great. Everyone should be spending their time like this.
Can you show us the map?
Wait, you also missed the what are you using the map for?
I'm making like a visual novel sort of thing in PowerPoint. Classic thing for me to do.
A visual novel?
It's like a video game.
Okay.
I'll show you the
best
map.
genre of video game.
You're making a video game in PowerPoint?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's cool.
It's loading images, 420 out of 421.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
That is tight.
Have you ever considered ADing a format that was map based, so that rather than a suggestion, you had cooked up like a very complicated map that all the and then you printed out a giant version of it, and like everyone had to keep track of where their characters were.
The improv we could do about this place would be actually insane. You have no idea. Okay, are you ready for me to share my screen?
Yes.
And whoa, that's crazy. So is this like a zoom in kind of concept? Like if you zoom in?
Yes.
Huh.
So like, we'll start over here. This is like the castle. And like I've been doing a lot of like terrain painting sort of stuff. Like I had to like, it was like ships, like a shipyard, and like barracks and the.
Can you drag in ships, or do you draw the ships?
No, this is all. There's a lot of stamps. Everything is stamps. But yeah, this is the fisherman's market. There's the tanner. This is like a little village. There's the fishery, and there's like a little tent. This is like the black market. There's the alchemist. This is like the blacksmith's alley. This is like, there's the smith and the carpenter and the mason. This is a theater. This is like the administrative district. This is where all the nobles live. This is like a little marketplace area inn, and these people have a secret brewery in the back. It's like behind a theater as well. This is like a little marketplace. I think I might make this bigger. This is the farm. I didn't make all of these assets, by the way. A lot of these I stole. Like this windmill, I didn't make the windmill asset. But I did make this orange tree grove.
Wow.
And this little farmhouse and the little barn. This is the Merchants Guild. This is the Mages Academy. This is the graveyard. This is the university and the library, and the monument. This is, who is this guy? I forgot who this guy is. Oh, these trees should be on top, probably.
Yeah. And does this land have a name?
Beloria.
Beloria.
This is the observatory. This is the ravine. This is the abandoned tower. And yeah, I think that's all of it. There's a lighthouse.
Nice.
That's sick. But yeah, it's huge, and I'm not even done. I have so much left to do with like all of this area and stuff. That's my outro. My sign off.
Thank you.
So that's my sign off.
You should send us a photo of it so we can put it in the notes. Like if you send us a website or something that you can link.
I think we should cut there in the middle of her saying, and this is the, and this is the, and this is the, and fade into the outro music. I think that.
No. I don't know if you've been listening to the episodes recently, Julian.
Mm-hmm.
The past 2 or 3 episodes, there's the sign off, and then there's the full length of See Me Now has us talking.
Oh, so how does it end?
What?
So how does it end?
It's like there's the main body of the sign off, and then at some point someone's like, all right, we should probably end it, and then we keep talking, and the See Me Now cuts in at the we should probably end it.
Yeah, okay.
You can hear Sebastian being like, can't you see me now? And Jayda's like, and this is the tavern? And this is
yeah, I think that's the right way to pull it.